Psychedelics have been around for thousands of years, from paintings of mushrooms found in caves dating back to over 7,000 years ago, to indigenous groups using mushrooms and ayahuasca in sacred rituals. These out of this world medicines have been used to expand one's consciousness and bring one to wholeness. This goes much deeper than having a trip. This is intentionally having a psychedelic experience and allowing that journey to teach you the lessons, breakthroughs, or bring you the healing you need to create groundbreaking positive change in your life and relationships. Welcome to another episode of Shattering Reality. I am your host, Sabrina Weibel, and on this podcast, we break through the common limitations of modern reality and expand your thinking as we delve into topics of quantum physics, spirituality, channeling, and much more. Nothing is off the table here as we work to uncover human behavior and the secret powers of the mind and universe through discussing esoteric and sometimes controversial topics. Today, I brought on Alex, who is a seasoned psychedelic integration coach, and we talked about different psychedelic tools and what they're used for, how to prepare for an experience like this, the biggest mistakes that people make when taking psychedelics, how to properly integrate your journey so that you can actually take away the life lessons that were learned and grow from them, a bit into the psyche of what these hallucinations mean and how real they really are, and more. If you're loving this podcast, the best way to show your love is to leave a 5-star review with the platform that you are listening to this off of and share it with a friend so that more people can hear these topics. And with that being said, let's get into it. Well, welcome onto the show, Alex.
Hi, Sabrina. So excited to be here.
So excited to have you. So you are big into psychedelic integration, which
Yeah.
is huge when it comes to like these alternative holistic plant medicines like being more and more widely used. I feel like people are talking about it more now than before. And so can we start off by you just sharing with the audience what psychedelic integration is and how did you get into this in the first place?
Yeah. How to keep this short? I'll do my best. I think I'll start a bit with my story, like how I stumbled across this, how I ended up in this place, and then talk about what psychedelic integration is. So I've always been a seeker. I always felt like there's more to life than what we experience. I felt like, as Joseph Campbell from The Hero's Journey used to say, bring forth what is within you, bring forth what is within you. You gotta bring forth what is within you. There's a greatness within. And it felt like, I don't know how, I just need to leave my home country as soon as I turn 18 and go out into the world and figure out what that is. It felt like there was an itch I wasn't able to scratch, a thirst I wasn't able to quench. It felt like there's something, it goes deeper. There's something I want to find out. So I studied psychology, and that didn't answer any of my questions around meaning and consciousness and purpose. I guess I was just studying the wrong degree. I don't think any bachelor's does that. But I had very high expectations of learning about the psyche and the study of the mind. But by the end of my degree, I had stumbled upon meditation, and that had started giving me a lot of the answers I was after. And by then, I had read about psychedelics in a blog called High Existence. I don't know if you or anyone in your audience knows about this. It was like 2015. I was a second-year psychology student, and I was just reading that blog. And it felt like, I didn't know anything about psychedelics, but it felt like the answers I've been seeking could be in that tool. And when I got to try psychedelics a couple of years later, it felt as if that hypothesis was confirmed. Like, yep, I knew it. These tools have great potential to show us what is within, that there's actually more than this. I've actually had an experience on MDMA, one of my first experiences on MDMA, where it felt as if I'm standing behind a door that's mostly closed but slightly open. And when we take psychedelics, that door of perception opens and we get to see all that is always there. It's always accessible. But because we're so stuck in our beliefs, in the prison of our beliefs and our biases and our programming, that we are missing out of what is always there. which is love, which is truth, which is an experience of this is more real than this. So I realized that that is the real sobriety. Being
I'm getting
distracted.
chills.
Yeah, me too, actually. It's like us being distracted, like giving our attention away. That is not real sobriety. We're like half asleep. And these medicines help us to tap into a place that brings forth what is within us more, that brings us into our full potential more. And it took years and years. I didn't even know that psychedelic assisted therapy was a thing or a field to be in. But it was after years and years that I realized that what am I doing? Like trying to do jobs I hate. What I want is to self-actualize. I want to help others self-actualize, and psychedelic therapy is the way. And I'm gonna go back to psychology if I have to. Like now I see how psychology can work, because psychedelics done alone do not bring healing necessarily. Sometimes people stumble across mystical experiences and find deeper meaning in their lives, but without integration that we can talk about later in this podcast, without some support, without someone knowing how to ask the right questions and support the experience, we're still missing out of those deeper layers within us, those deeper layers of truth and so much. Like I am trying to keep these answers short because I don't want this episode to be 2 hours long. So yeah, I'll just pause here. That has been kind of my journey with stumbling upon this field and then just piecing together different things. And I went on to study. I just trained in compassion inquiry, which is Dr. Gabor Mate's psychotherapeutic approach. And that is also an amazing approach that combined with psychedelics can really help people move through. I was looking into the most effective ways to heal. I was like, talk therapy for 50 years doesn't sound like a really fast, efficient way to, get something done, to have those breakthroughs that people really want. And then somatic-based therapy is much faster. There are some approaches like internal family systems or like different ways of coaching that actually move the needle forward. So I was looking into, and that's why psychedelic assisted therapy is really effective, because we don't have to spend years in therapy. Like we can actually, I'm always like, level up, people. Come on, we've got it in us. Come on, like just use this with this way, with this guidance, and then get to the next level. And then the next level, it goes deeper. There's more. Go deeper. It gets better when you go deeper. And so on. I think I'll just pause here.
So when you say psychedelic integration and MDMA, I'm not even familiar with what MDMA is. I'm vaguely familiar with some of these things, but have like dipped my toes in just like the knowledge of it. Can you go deeper into what are the different tools that people can use as far as psychedelics go? And then how does that psychedelic integration process work?
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions. Because often I don't know what people don't know. So these questions really help. So there's different types of psychedelics. First of all, I always start with this. I think of drugs and substances in two different buckets. One is those that are harmful for our bodies, our minds, and other people, like cocaine, heroin, meth, alcohol, tobacco. All of those are harmful for our bodies, for our minds. People often create like cause harm on them. And then there's another bucket of actual classic psychedelics that have been used since our ancestors for religious purposes, for spiritual reasons, since the beginning of time. Some people say that the invention of language and communication was because apes took mushrooms, like thousands of years ago. That's the stoned ape theory by Terence McKenna. Some people say it's true, some not. I'm not going to go into that, but to me, it makes sense because these are potent tools and mushrooms have been around forever. So in that bucket, we have psilocybin mushrooms that are quite famous, LSD that also became famous, especially in the 50s and the 60s. We have ayahuasca, we have iboga, we have mescaline, and bufo DMT, 5-MeO DMT. These are psychedelics. MDMA is kind of, it's not a classic psychedelic, and it doesn't bring the hallucinations, because most psychedelics will create hallucinations, which many people say this is what creates healing. Because now what's going on is that pharmaceutical companies are starting to think, what if we like legalize some of these substances because they're actually very therapeutic for mental health issues, but take away the psychedelic effects? And it's like, no.
That's like the point.
Yeah, because those visions are what's healing. Some people re-experience something like ayahuasca, which is the drug of all drugs in a way. People call her the grandmother. It feels as
Mm.
if it is like a master medicine in a way. Iboga, the same. Iboga is amazing for healing of addictions, from alcohol to drugs to opioid addiction. It's almost a miracle treatment for addiction. LSD has been used for treating alcoholism problems as well, like back in the 50s before it became illegal. And in ayahuasca, for instance, it's many people re-experience their own birth or have a vision where they realize their parents tried to abort them. And
Mm.
suddenly they realize why they felt not loved in their lives or not wanted. I'm getting chills as I'm saying this too. It's like they're really potent substances. So, and that those visions on psychedelics are actually what bring the healing and bring that sense of understanding and embodiment, because it feels as if we go through life being very much stuck in our heads and in our minds, and psychedelics actually bring it down to you're so much more than your mind. Like, hey, there's a body that's constantly talking to you, constantly giving you signals. It so many of our memories and our childhood memories, our traumas are stored in the body and they're still there. And most of our suffering is because we keep suppressing them and avoiding them and escaping them. And then you take this substance and you realize, oh my gosh, it's all in here. And something that's really beautiful on psychedelics is that we really get it. Often it's very simple messages, like everything is love. When people try to describe their psychedelic experiences and their friends are like, is that all? Like, haven't you been seeing quotes about that like your whole life? It's like, and then you're on a psychedelic experience and you finally get it. You're like, whoa, this piece of advice that my friends and family have been giving me for years and years, and now it's embodied. Like I fully get it. And then it's like that matrix scene of like the red pill, blue pill, that you see something and then it changes you. You cannot go back and unsee it. But then that's where integration comes in, to actually have it change your life, because the inside alone, it's not enough. And we can get to integration in a sec, but just to answer, that's kind of like a brief introduction to psychedelics and substances in general. MDMA is an empathogen. It doesn't bring those visions and hallucinations, but it's incredible at especially healing relationship issues. Like,
Mm.
I think it's like it will be the best couples therapy ever, treatment, but also relationship to ourselves, relationship to our best friends, relationship to our parents. I would love to take MDMA with my parents. I don't think they're on board. I know they're not actually, but it would be such an experience of a lifetime to feel like I really love you. And I know
Mm.
you've made mistakes, and I know I've made mistakes in this relationship, but let's make this better before it's too late. And often conversations are hard to have without psychedelics. And another thing is that on MDMA, one experiences so much love and trust, that it's easy to revisit painful memories without getting triggered, without running away, but to actually see the pain. And that's why they've been trying to legalize it for treatment of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now in the US, unfortunately, the FDA rejected, but the psychedelic movement continues to try to legalize these substances, and MDMA is the easiest. Almost nothing. It's like 1% chance that something will go wrong because you feel so much love that it's like really hard to have a bad trip, let's say. Well, with something like psilocybin mushrooms or LSD or ayahuasca, if someone has never done some inner work, they might not be ready to see what they're gonna see. And the medicine will just show you what's there in the subconscious. So some people are not ready, while MDMA is a great medicine for someone to start with.
So, when people take these psychedelics, what are mistakes that people might make who typically take them? And then how does that integration process go for like the best result from taking them?
Yeah. So first we would start with preparation and that's why such a thing as psychedelic preparation exists, because many people will tell me, oh, I've taken mushrooms and I got paranoid and it was a horrible experience. It's like, yeah, you were in a festival, you had never done it before, you didn't trust those people around you, and you realize you actually didn't trust anyone in this festival because everyone was like a stranger. So it's like, that's like the setting. The setting, you want to be comfortable, you want to be in a place you trust. If it's at home, have your fluffy blankets, have enough water, have a nice playlist, not someone that's going to make you paranoid. Even music can guide the experience massively. And we tend to use music in psychedelic therapy. Often we say, if you get overwhelmed, change the music. Put on some Tibetan bowls. Like, there's so many tips and tricks to help someone have a different experience, and that's why we prepare. Another thing that many people will do is, well, as someone said to me once, the best preparation for ayahuasca is 2 years in therapy, because like many people are not prepared. They have no idea what triggers them, and then they're overtaken by the trigger. They don't realize that, hey, this is where I am and this is where the trigger is. There's no space. That's why having a mindfulness practice before a psychedelic experience is also very useful, to realize you're not your thoughts. So, and that's why having a trusted guide during the experience can be very useful, because you can say, hey, I think I'm going crazy, I think I'm dying, and the guide can help to remind you how to breathe, to touch you if that's okay, and then that can be very grounding during the experience. So it depends on what medicine someone is planning to do, what are their intentions for doing psychedelics in general. So like, again, for like treatment of addictions, iboga could be great, but iboga is also pretty hardcore medicine. It lasts
What is
many hours.
iboga?
So it's native in Africa. It's a plant, and I have not had the experience myself yet. I haven't been called to this medicine. A friend of mine had chronic depression cured from iboga, and now she's like a completely different person. But she's also been in the personal development space for a bit, and that changes things. Like, someone who has done inner work before might go deeper and have more lasting results than someone who's jumping into psychedelics as their entry into healing, because that can be quite overwhelming. So iboga lasts like about 12 hours. It's not a fast or easy medicine. People, since I haven't had the experience myself, I don't speak too much about it. I don't coach on it, but I have some information that it's not, if you're not called to iboga, and if it's not addictions that you're trying to work with, maybe don't go there. Maybe start with something like, again, MDMA is a really beautiful starting point. Then psilocybin mushrooms that last 4 to 6 hours. And then to understand kind of what it's like to be in an altered state of consciousness, because everything disappears. The world dissolves in itself. The walls start to move. There's colors. The flowers might turn around and smile at you. It's like there are hallucinogenic substances. So having someone, maybe microdosing is also an amazing introduction to psychedelic, because it's really safe. But then you start to realize that, oh, I've taken something that actually makes me more calm, or actually brings a lot of sadness I didn't know was there. So I can stop microdosing to stop feeling it, or I can actually work through it. And it makes it easier to work through it. So like preparing someone with like, this is kind of how it is, I've had enough experiences on LSD until I realized, oh, this is where I am and this is where the LSD is. Obviously, it depends on the dosage. If you take like a really high dose, there's none of that. You're just like overtaken by the experience, and all you can do is breathe and surrender. Another reason why people are having negative experiences is because they're trying to fight the experience, they're trying to resist it, they're trying to change it, they wish it was different, they get stuck in repetitive loops and thought loops. And it's like breathe and allow is a really good mantra on psychedelics and in life. Breathe and allow and just go with it. And I often say to my clients, you can write in massive letters because it's hard to read when you're on psychedelics, this will end. Like it's not gonna last forever. It feels as if it's gonna last forever, but especially if it's something like mushrooms, you can even write like, this will end by 10 p.m. Like tomorrow, I will be back, on board, back and fully functional. So yeah, that's that. And then integrating, about integration. So integration, I looked it up. To integrate is to make something whole again. And healing has a very similar definition, is to make something whole. So I see now integration and healing as almost synonyms. Like to integrate, integration never ends. It's the opposite of a quick fix. It takes the rest of our lives, but we then live with more awareness, more consciousness that, hey, I've had this experience. It showed me some things. What is really meaningful to me now? Because not everything might be meaningful, especially if it's a psychedelic with a lot of symbolism, like ayahuasca. You might see snakes and serpents and tigers and birds, and not everything is to be taken literally or to even be understood now. With something like MDMA, you can have like a 5-hour therapy session on it. So it's a very different experience. You can talk, you can be very functional. You're just really high and really happy and love everybody. Just that. And so it depends the integration of different substances, but it's basically to unpack the experience and realize what was meaningful, what was important, understand the insights, like what does this mean for my life moving forward, and find ways to translate those insights into action. So it could be, health related. Maybe I need to start eating healthier. This has really not been serving me. Or it could also be setting boundaries with someone, being around different types of people. And then integration would be, am I doing that? Am I staying true to my psychedelic experience that showed me what is really true for me? And I have not been living in alignment with my truth, but with like societal norms or whatever. So definitely having someone to support through integration, it just takes it to a whole other level. Like I'm an integration coach. I talk about these things. I create classes and groups and books about it. And I don't integrate by myself as well as I integrate with my therapist. Like healing is relational. We need each other because we often, and that's also the difference between journeying on psychedelics by ourselves and with our friends versus with a trusted professional. Because our coping mechanisms have been developed to protect us from pain and from things we don't want to see. So during integration, we might just, hang out in that field where we want to be, but not actually work on some deeper layers of things that without which we cannot move forward in life. So having an outside witness, ideally a group, like indigenous communities have always been in groups. For them, integration is their lives. It's a very different structure. So it's like to learn from them as much as we can. There's many integration groups now these days. Or just working with someone who's psychedelically informed and knows how these medicines work and is able to bring you back, to what was it that you tapped into during that ceremony.
Now, if someone doesn't have an integrative, if someone can't go to someone else for this guidance, is there a good way for them to be able to integrate by themselves? Slash, like, what is the best way for them to be able to integrate by themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's creating space to touch base with the ceremony's felt experience. What I see very commonly is that the psychedelic experience will reconnect us to ourselves and to our bodies. And often we come home and it feels like our life outside of the ceremony looks really different. We go to the same work. Many people don't enjoy their work. They're around people they don't want to be around, but they have to. And then it's as if they start losing themselves again. As Gabor Mate says, the essence of trauma is that we got disconnected from ourselves. And in a psychedelic experience, we often reconnect with ourselves, who we really are. That is almost always my intention when I go into a psychedelic ceremony. Remember who you are. It's like, oop, life, and I forgot. And wait, who am I again? Right. And then there's no dilemmas. It's like, oh, I know who I am. Like, this is where I'm going. This is what I want. So then if I was to be alone integrating, I would create space maybe first thing in the morning, which is a great time before you give attention to other people's requests and wants and desires, to just tune in. And before our minds are busy with messages and emails and stuff, to just go inwards. It could be journaling, it could be meditation, it could be a somatic practice. If people like to do some yoga, some stretching, some mindful walking, mindful stretching, sitting in silence, looking at, the sea, whatever anyone's jam is, but just to tune in to myself and my felt experience and bring back the ceremony and the felt experience of the ceremony. Like if my intention was remember who you are and I've had a vision around that, it's like, can I sit and bring back that vision for a minute or so? Another amazing way to integrate is if the session was recorded. Now, that's not always available. If it was at home, if it was like MDMA therapy can happen over Zoom, or if it was, even if you were journaling right after, like revisiting that, and so that you're still processing and you're still bringing the content of the ceremony. So either watching back the recording, transcribing it could be great because then you're spending longer with the ceremony, or just if you were journaling right after, then to just revisit those journals and maybe continue journaling. We often ask some questions, like I have some free integration prompts in my website of like some questions to reflect on after an experience to continue integrating. But creating that space to come back to yourself, I think that's the most important part. Because then, so to stay connected before we get disconnected, and ideally not get disconnected, but stay connected.
And how real with these hallucinations, and we enter this like space of just pure consciousness, I feel like sometimes, where the world, the 3D world around you isn't like 3D anymore. How real do you feel like these hallucinations are? Like, are they real? Are they projections of our subconscious? Are they not real? Like, what is that?
Yeah, I love this question. It's a really common question. So again, it depends. It depends. Often when we see something during a psychedelic journey, we might just know that it's real. And there might be some purging around that. It could be crying, it could be laughing, it could be understanding, it could be actually like vomiting. It depends on the psychedelic. Not all of them make you vomit. But often it's that moment of like, wow, it's sunk in, that it changed me. And you know it. But then it also depends on how connected someone is with themselves in general. Because some people, I don't know how familiar everyone is with internal family systems, like parts work. So some people might identify with a part. Basically, long story short, it's a type of therapy created by Richard Schwartz that basically says that we are made out of, okay, so our true essence, who we really are, our true self, which he calls self with capital S, is always there. However, in childhood, there were different parts that were created in order to survive our childhood, to cope with our environment, some of which could be a perfectionist part, an achiever, a people pleaser, the funny one. There's all these different parts. So often as we grow older, we identify with the parts. We're like, oh, I'm a perfectionist. I just need to do this. And we never really go deep. We never question it. But being a perfectionist when we were 4 could have helped us receive love from our parents. So it served us in a survivally, let's say. But now it's actually sabotaging our lives because maybe we never finish something because it's never perfect enough. We've never launched something because it's not perfect enough. We don't find the one because no one is perfect enough. We don't feel good enough because we're not perfect enough. So now it's a complete sabotage and it's getting in the way. So without getting too much deeper into this, often in ceremonies, I feel like, as much as in people's lives, people identify with the part and they forget, or they don't know, they're just disconnected from who they really are, which is not the part. The part is a process. It's like a child. I often speak to my parts as if I'm a parent and I have all these children. I'm like, okay, everyone come out of your room. Let me hear it. What is it that you want? You can all speak now. And then I'm like, okay, thank you. You can all go back to your rooms now. Like, I just need to chill. So just realizing that I can manage and hear and integrate those parts and not avoid them, not hate them, not wish they weren't there, but actually allow them to speak and understand why they were created in the first place and what they need in order to step back and what they need in order to trust me that I'm not a child anymore. I'm actually an adult and I can adult. But it takes that process that can also happen on psychedelics very beautifully. I've done it on a psilocybin ceremony by myself. It was amazing. I was quiet, and in my head, it felt as if all those issues were in a queue. My daddy issues, my mommy issues, my like all the different things that are normally unconscious. Suddenly, I was like, okay, let's look at everything and assess. And it felt as if often many things would come up at different times. And I was like, okay, I hear you. Please go back in the queue. Now we're dealing with what happened with my mom 10 years ago. And I'll go back to you. Like I will. And they actually listen. It's quite insane. There's an amazing book written by the inventor, let's say, of this method, which is called No But Parts. And it's a great introduction on internal family systems therapy. But yeah, I feel like, back to your question, like, are the visions real or not? So and that's where guidance could help. We don't want someone to identify with the part and believe that this is who they are. Because they might, from the part's perspective, they might feel like they might sabotage, for instance. It's like, oh, I don't think this relationship is what I need. Maybe I should just be alone. But that's actually an avoidant part that feels insecure and wants to sabotage true love. So it's like just realizing who's talking. Is this your real, authentic self? Or is this a wounded part that is still believing that you're just 6 years old, for instance, and mommy forgot to pick you up from primary school?
Is there anything else that you feel called to share with the audience about psychedelics, about the integrative journey?
Start low and go slow. We say that with microdosing, but in general, because some people are too eager, you can always take more. Like, even if you're microdosing, which is very subtle, or even if you're having your first higher, like medium to high dose experience, start on the lower end because you don't know how sensitive you are. You can assess to how sensitive you are to different substances like alcohol, coffee, paracetamol, how easy and quick is it for you to get tipsy, for instance, if you're having a drink. So but often it takes experience. Different strains, if we're talking about mushrooms, for instance, different strains have different potencies. 1 gram, it might be a certain potency in one type of mushroom, and it might be the equivalent of 3 grams to another strain of mushrooms. And 1 to 3 grams is a massive difference when you're taking psychedelic mushrooms. Like you can really tell. So If it's someone starting out, we say start low and go slow. You can always take more, but especially if you don't have the perfect setting. Set goes for mindset. So we say if you're going through like a really depressive phase, maybe it's not the time to do psychedelics because it could amplify that. Now, for someone who is okay with working at it with it and going deeper, that's fine. But for someone who just wants to escape depression, they might get the opposite of that. And we never know. We say set an intention because it can offer some guidance instead of going to La La Land. Because people can say you're taking LSD and you're going in the nature, which would be a beautiful thing on LSD because the nature looks like 6D or something. It's like so beautiful. Everything comes to life even more. The colors are heightened. And someone can just go from that to like thinking about something that happened yesterday to getting stuck on like a fly in the room. I actually had that. I felt like a fly is following me. Like you can get annoyed or whatever. And it felt like we were at some point next to some cows, and it felt as if I can smell the cow because all our senses are heightened on psychedelics. And then it felt like that was taking me out. So, if you're not happy with the set and setting, maybe don't go too high if you cannot fully surrender and relax into the experience, because the more you can surrender into the experience, the deeper you go.
Mm.
And the more you allow it, the better it's going to be. Even if it's negative, life is not just about having fun, it's also about integrating the shadow. And the more we look at it, the more we can also appreciate joy and be grateful and experience a sense of awe. The more we take time and be with sadness and grief and pain and anger, the more we increase our ability to feel all these other positive emotions as well. So yeah, start low. You can always take more. If it's been an hour or 2 hours tops, normally an hour to an hour and a half, and then you can see if it hasn't worked enough, if you need more, then you can always take a bit more. But if you take too much and you're not ready for it, then you just need to breathe and allow, because nothing will make it stop. Then you just gotta ride the wave.
And I feel like what you said is just such great life advice. Like the surrender, allow. I feel like the more we fight our circumstances, the more we are frustrated with where we're at, the more we are angry with this, that, and the other, the more we like resist life and close ourselves off to like new and amazing life experiences. So I feel like the surrender and allowing with the psychedelics, also in life in general, is so key. And the last question I want to ask before we close out is how would someone get access to medical grade quality psychedelics where they feel like they can trust to take and have like a quality experience?
Yeah. So first of all, it depends on where someone is based in the world. Unfortunately, in the most part of the world, psychedelics are still largely illegal. So most of this work happens underground. I'm personally quite loud and proud about it because I don't do anything illegal. I do prep and integration. So I don't, people will either go to like a retreat. The legal places are Costa Rica, Jamaica, the Netherlands, here in Europe. There are some places in the world that you can actually access these medicines legally, but in pretty much every country you can access them illegally, because since the beginning of humanity, people had a thirst for knowing and going deeper, and they've always used psychedelics, and no one can stop that. Like you cannot stop humanity. Even animals use psychedelics. It's quite insane. Like sometimes they leak. I think there was like this fish I was reading about that dolphins lick that fish and it actually creates like psychedelic effects, and then dolphins are tripping.
Why am I not surprised that it's the dolphins that want to trip?
Right? It's always the dolphins. I think it was also some other animals, but I'm forgetting right now. But yeah, so there are some websites that actually connect practitioners with people who are interested in finding medicine, normally when one is ready, the medicine will find them. What I tend to say is like, think about it, talk about it, share, search. And I love that kind of, it makes it sacred when something is not that, available everywhere, but you actually need to seek. Definitely find reviews if you can. If you're going to like a retreat center, if you're going to like a shaman to take ayahuasca, if you could like speak to them or speak to people who have worked with them, always, because there's also many people in this industry who are not in integrity and will abuse their position while someone is under the influence of psychedelics. So definitely go to somewhere you can trust, because again, trust is so important in a psychedelic experience. I think many people don't go deep because they don't trust whoever is serving or whoever is around them.
Mm-hmm.
If you are to do a medicine at home, then get a test kit. Like if it's something like LSD, MDMA definitely needs to be tested these days. DanceSafe in the US, I think it's dancesafe.org, is a great organization. They're really helping with harm reduction. They have test kits that are quite very affordable. And also Roll Kit, I think it's another one. I can get back to you on a few resources after this conversation. So, like, people actually testing their medicine is really important. Mushrooms, if you grow them, then you know they're good. Or if someone that you know has grown the mushrooms, unless it's capsules, like some people get microdosing in a capsule, you can open the capsule and just see it. It would be like a grinded mushroom powder. People just literally grind mushrooms to create powder out of them so that stems and cup have like the same potency, and then put it in a capsule. But I think especially with like LSD and MDMA, it's really important to test it because people often mix different things with MDMA, like from washing powder to fentanyl, it can be fatal. So testing that would be crucial.
Yeah, and we can link any websites in the description below so you guys can check that out. And the last question that I have with everyone that comes and is featured on the podcast is, if you were to share one sentence of how you believe that we as a human race could come together and make the world a better place, what would it be?
Hmm. I really believe that healing is relational. We need each other. We're social animals. We're pack animals. We're not meant to be alone. And I've always used to say, be honest and communicate honestly and offer people feedback, help them improve and support people because people thrive when they're supported. So it's like coming together, being really honest, like having real conversations of like, hey, whatever you're doing is really amazing. And people might not even have anyone tell them that, and that can really help them do more of it and do it better. And also the opposite, it's like, hey, what you've said, like, did not come across really well. I think it offended this other person. And again, it's like it can be humbling to know, oh, thank you. Now I know I can fix that. I can improve on that. So yeah, it's like speak honestly, people, and be together. Like I'm also creating spaces of like-minded people coming together and having that sense of support and community and authenticity and like that similar minded mindset of like we're growth individual, like we want to go deeper, we want more, we want to stay connected to who we really are. So like creating more of these spaces, and I know this podcast is one of these.
Yeah, we need those spaces. Yeah, feel free to please like share your socials, any contact info.
Sure. So everything I do is through the lens of my experience. So everything I do is called the Alex experience. I don't coach on anything I haven't tried. I only coach on things I've been using and practicing for years and they've worked. And I'm like, come on, this works. I can guide you through it. So it's at the Alex Experience on Instagram. My website is thealexexperience.com. Is Alexandra-Artzoglou, my complicated last name, on LinkedIn. And these are the main places I hang out. Basically, my website and my Instagram would be the go-tos. I will be creating a lot more on integration because it feels as if everything I've done so far has been a journey of integration, of going deeper and collecting things that have worked from like world-renowned teachers, from workshops of Tony Robbins and Joe Dispenza, to actual psychedelic experiences, to just meditating enough for it to work. Like most of my life changed because I've meditated long enough once, and I've had almost an awakening. I like to call it. Maybe I'm minimizing it. It was probably an awakening. It changed me forever. So then I do more of that, and that keeps changing me every day. So I'm sharing more of that because I feel like in sharing, and yeah, like I said, healing is relational. We really need each other, and sharing is everything. So yeah, I'm creating more spaces with integration, people realizing that this is a long-term path, but this is good news. Like it never ends. It only gets better and better and better. And there's always deeper we can go, and there's always more depth. And it goes, this kind of work goes a lot deeper on a group level than on one-to-one level, because the group raises the energy of the individual. We often hear our story in someone else's story. And that's why I feel like groups are the place to be now.
I agree. I was actually, when I was at the Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat about a year ago now, almost a year ago now, the studies that he was showing to us were when one person meditated, he would show like the research, the labs of what they did to test. And I don't remember exactly what they were testing
Yeah.
on, but it was like the heightened levels of the like healthy hormones and the heightened levels of their like memory and all these different things. So it showed the positive effect of one person meditating by themselves. And then when it showed when two people meditated together, not even talking, not even conversing, just in the similar spot, meditating at the same time, both of their results exponentialized. And it's so interesting to see that when we're like, people boost people. We're meant to be with people. We're meant to have this community and do things together. And I love what you said about healing together. And it just brings it together so beautifully. So if you're someone who is wanting to go deeper into this, if it piques your interest, if you are feeling the call, if it keeps showing up in your life, check Alex out, see what she has to offer. I'll link all of her links down below as well. Thank you so much for being on the episode, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.
I'm so glad that you tuned in. If you enjoyed this, please give it a 5-star review, sharing what you loved most about this podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode of Shattering Reality.